welcome to Objects of New York, a podcast about New Yorkers and the objects that we love. Each episode, I will talk to a New Yorker about an object that they have, that they love. The object could have been found on the street, thrifted from the local housing works, or gifted to them by a family member or friend. Maybe it's a family heirloom, whatever. The point is, I want to hear about your stuff, where you got it, and how you found it. This is ultimately a podcast about things, stories, people in New York, but mostly it's about celebrating the thing. To paraphrase Tom Haverford, people die, but things are forever. There was a movie in the 1990s that I'm convinced only I remember called The Secret of Roan Inish. It's part fairy tale, part period drama. The film follows this young Irish girl called Fiona, who goes to live with her grandparents in a small coastal village. One night, her grandfather recounts the story of how her little brother was washed out to sea. "The sea gives, the sea takes away," he says in this grave Irish brogue, and then he puffs on his pipe. "The sea gives, the sea takes away." Why am I talking about a 1990s Irish fairy tale movie about Selkies set in the 1940s that only I remember? Let me finish. I started this podcast because, like a lot of New Yorkers, I have a passion for finding stuff on the street. There is a magical quality to the streets of New York. A New Yorker can just as easily furnish their apartment with things they find on the street as they can throw things away by leaving them on the street. And so whenever I come across a particularly good stoop find, I think to myself, the street gives, the street takes away. So, for our first episode, I am speaking to a boy I'm dating, Martin Kemp.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for joining us here today at our kitchen table.
Dining room
Table. Well, adjacent to the kitchen.
Adjacent to the kitchen. The kitchen dining room.
Assistant to the kitchen.
Assistant to the kitchen.
We've got our tea. And here we are talking about stuff, our favorite thing to talk about.
That's right.
So between the two of us, I would say that I typically bring home more street stuff than you. You're more of the buying things from a store type.
Yeah, I don't have the eye. So this is one of the things I admire about you so much, which is that as we walk around the streets of New York, your eyes are darting everywhere looking for things, shiny things
street
on the
stuff.
street. And you're very good at spotting the potential in things. And I often see things on the street and I assume they're trash. And you don't. You just assume they could be something better. They just need to be in the right context.
You do have higher standards than I do.
I don't think, well, I do and I don't, because what I often find is that you find things and I'm like, yes, obviously, that's amazing. And yet my eyes glass right over it. I don't know what it is. But yeah, I do tend to buy more than I merely take, I suppose.
If you could look in this room, or I guess we talked about earlier, we were talking about what object you would want to talk about. What object would that be?
Yeah, I think the thing that I do take, and I am thrilled every time I see a little box of them, are books that people are getting rid of. People tend to just leave random boxes of books around New York. And I like it for two reasons. I like it because I like having books, but also I like it because it tells you something about the person who was there. You often see weird collections of obscure academic journals.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah.
Like studying for the bar exam or taking the SAT or something. There's a lot of those in the neighborhood in Carroll Gardens.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it does vary by neighborhood as well.
Yeah.
Well, like Brooklyn tends to have a lot of lawyers.
A lot of lawyers.
So, yeah, you get a lot of lawyer books. And then I've been other places where it's been like all science. And I remember there was one place which had a whole bunch of, what are those before the book comes out, they issue one which is for comic,
the copy,
right?
Yeah.
And it's
the
in a white
proof?
cover.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they're
Whatever.
called.
I don't know.
But yeah, there was a stack of those which are issued for people to kind of, give their comments and quotes for.
I didn't know that. What did you find
I
that?
thought it was in Brooklyn somewhere, obviously. But it was near a store. We were walking along, it was near a store, and there was like a bunch of them. Anyway.
Do you remember what the subjects were?
I picked one of them up because I've got it, and it was Why I Killed Pluto, or something like that, about the planet. And
wow.
yeah. Yeah, and there are a few others there as well.
Oh, I didn't know we had that.
Yeah,
So
it's
the
lying
one-
around somewhere. It's like literally, I think it's in that stack right there somewhere.
Goodness.
Yeah.
And it's the one that's the unpublished version? Or
Yeah,
the-
it's like a not for resale version.
Oh.
Yeah, it's around somewhere. I have no idea. You know, we have stacks of them everywhere now.
Yeah, I love that we kind of collect books for...
Fun.
Yeah, and like shamelessly, I think that's the only thing I feel like you can never have too many of. Like you can always have more room for more books. And
I think so.
That's the only thing I disagree with Marie Kondo. Just like vehemently. Well, no, there's a few other things I disagree with her on too, but like I think that was like the main point
You're
of
the antithesis of Marie Kondo in many ways.
Well, I liked her approach of...
These things must bring you joy.
I totally am aligned with that. I think that's something I try to live by.
Yeah, it's just lots of things.
Just lots of things bring me joy. But this makes me think about Brazenhead and our experience there. And do you want to just kind of,
maybe you do a better job than me.
Yeah, this was just one of those perfect kind of New York moments that you only get to experience one time and then it's gone. Like the portal just opened at the right time for us. So I was browsing like a 2017 or 2016 hardcover version of Atlas Obscura, and I came across a listing for Brazenhead Books, which is a bookshop in New York City that used to have a storefront on Atlantic Avenue, well, Lower East Side and then Atlantic Avenue. And then it moved into a speakeasy kind of operation where the bookseller would sell his books from his apartment on the Upper East Side. And so the Atlas Obscura listing had the website, and then I went to the website, and you had to then submit an email. And so I emailed the address, and I said, hello, I think I'm in the right place. I would love to come and take a look at your bookshop if you're around or open. And the man who owned the bookshop was called Michael Seidenberg. And I think he got back to me within a few hours, and he was like, yeah, why not? Come by tonight. And he replied with the address.
And I was skeptical. I was like, hang on, so we're going to some random dude's house after you emailed him.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, come over tonight, babe.
Come on over. He's like, yeah, why not? I'll open up for you.
Yeah.
Here's my address, apartment number. And so we go up there together. It's like, great. And what's the worst that can happen?
I also remember walking in a direction. It was Upper East Side, right?
Upper East Side,
yeah. And I remember us walking along the street, and I was like, "Are you sure about this? Is this
this can't be right?" Meanwhile, I'm like, yes.
Yeah. And it was a very nondescript building, wasn't it? Because I remember we walked. It was just like it wasn't like a beautiful brownstone or anything like that.
No, it was
just
like an apartment building,
building.
I think it was a doorman building.
No, it wasn't a doorman building.
There was an elevator though.
There was, but it was on the ground floor, wasn't it? I remember going down some stairs to it.
Wow, I feel like I have a memory of going in an elevator.
Maybe you're right. I mean, who knows? My memory of it.
I love that we can't quite recall.
It's kind of perfect.
I have the address.
Was the door green? I remember the door being green.
I think there was an awning, and I think the awning was green.
Okay.
Over in front of the apartment building?
No, the door into his apartment.
Oh, into his apartment.
I thought that was like a dark green.
Oh, good call. Yeah. I don't recall. I love that we can't recall the details getting there because that makes it even more magical somehow.
It does.
And I could easily look up the address because it's in my inbox.
Yeah.
But I think it was like East 76th or East 75th Street. But we knock on the door and we kind of wait a few moments. And then Michael opens the door as if we're coming into his home. And he says, welcome, come on in. Or I don't know exactly what it was he said. But I remember my first impression of Michael was, a good character out of a book that you read about in New York. Like,
he reminded me of Paul Giamatti.
Yeah.
Paul, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
He had a perpetual twinkly, face, twinkling eyes and smile. He was missing a tooth, I think.
It's like a pirate version of...
Oh my gosh, so cool. And we walked into his apartment. On either side, walking down this hallway, it was just floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. And suddenly we were in a bookshop. We weren't in somebody's apartment. We were in a bookshop.
I don't know. It also still felt like his apartment. It just felt like he was selling his own book collection, basically.
Yeah.
And so I remember there was artwork on the walls as well. In places where there were not books, there was art. There was basically no wall was not adorned with either books or art.
I think
Yeah.
now that I think about it, I think that was a big inspiration for how I decorated my
Oh,
apartment.
quite possibly true. Yeah.
'Cause I remember the feeling I got when I walked in was immediately being hugged by his apartment, by all these books.
Yeah.
And within the first 5 minutes, we picked out a book which just so happened to be kind of a naughty, like old
erotica. Which did also tweak my, like, I was like, is this the situation we're in? Is every book here basically erotica? And this is like, and I'm going to be in a situation where we have to make some fairly large decisions about the nature of our relationship. Like,
yeah, because it was only like, what, a year and a half in? Or
we weren't
maybe a year. No,
yeah, maybe a year
even.
in. I think it wasn't, I thought it was 20, I thought it was less than a year. But
you're right, because I was still in Ditmas Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, Michael, we were like leafing through that book and he was like, oh yeah, that book's got a great bit on titty fucking.
Yeah.
If you like that kind of thing.
Yeah. And it was, you know.
But the way he said it wasn't creepy.
Well, was it not creepy?
It wasn't. Because he didn't have, like, as a woman. I'm gonna pull that gender card. You know, you can sense when someone is a safe person and not a safe person. And I got the sense that he was a safe person who genuinely was just sharing his space and sharing his life and his creativity with us. And I didn't get the sense that was like, yeah, he's brazen head books.
Yeah, I suppose as a boy, partial, as one says, to women, I thought that it sounded more like a question than it did a statement.
Okay, got it. That's fair. Well, anyway, titty fucking to one side.
But he was lovely, and honestly, it was amazing. And I think within seconds, he also ushered us into his kitchen, was plying
gave us some whiskey.
with some whiskey and
for free. By the way, we were the only people there.
Yeah.
So it was like we had a private time, and then he just kind of left us alone, and he was playing some jazz records.
Yeah.
And we got to just kind of peruse the different rooms. And he had an incredible collection.
It was amazing.
It was the best collection I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And we left with armfuls of books.
So many books. And I remember particularly had an excellent drama section, lots of great plays.
So good.
Theatre.
Yeah. I got a really good edition of Julius Caesar with like some
I wish we'd written
directions.
on all the books that we got there, that's where we got them from.
That's why when we went to the liquidation sale, I did that.
Right, because that's the other side of the story. Unfortunately, Michael passed away a few years ago.
Well, because right before we left, he said, oh, you have to come back for my monthly salon series where I get all these writers and they share their new work. You have to come back. Please come back. And we were like, obviously, we're coming back.
Yeah.
And then we just never did. It was just one of those.
I don't know why we never did it.
I don't either. I think
it's just we just get in the way. We let ourselves get in the way of that stuff. Way.
Yeah, it was a real shame on us.
I also felt like he invited you in a way. Like I didn't feel like because you were the writer and the actor and the creative, and I was kind of not. That.
And the thing that always haunts me to this day, because he sent me that email that was like, next time you're here, I have a present for you.
Oh, that's true.
And I have no idea what it was.
Yeah, probably the one about titty fucking.
Maybe, yeah. But yeah, then was it last year?
Last year we went to the liquidation.
Yeah, so Michael passed away a couple of years later after our first visit, and then we never saw him again.
There's a book about him, right? There's a book about.
Yeah, a group of like the people who came to his place for the salon series kind of took over the estate, and he had a place upstate. Actually, I think his house was in maybe Woodstock.
No, I think it was further south. Maybe you're right.
Yeah, but he basically was just selling books for the joy of it, and he wasn't making money. He just had this massive collection. Anyway, so after he passed away, his friends took over the estate and held this massive liquidation sale. And last year we got to go to that, and how many books did we buy?
So many.
At least 50?
Yeah.
Because we filled 3 or 4 banker boxes full. And a few really great first editions and some books that were like dedicated to him as well.
Yeah, the whole strip that we had lined on the floor of the sitting room for a while was all from there.
Magical.
Yeah.
I remember the thing that he influenced me the most about, I think about this a lot. He said to me, I buy a book if I like the font on the cover. I'm drawn to books as objects.
Yeah.
If I see a book that I like the look of, I just buy it. And that is honestly, that's how I buy books now.
Totally, it's exactly the same for me. I'm not sure whether that's something I could chalk up to that visit to Brazenhead. I think I've often done that. I think I've got more comfortable with the idea that I like having books around,
true,
and that it's okay to have a lot of books, and it's okay to have many books that you're never going to read.
Yes.
And
yes, it is okay.
Yeah, it is okay. It is okay. And I particularly enjoy having a stack of them by my favorite seat that I can just pick up and look into when I read a couple of lines, or I read a chapter, or I read just a paragraph, whatever it is. And, it's just nice to be able to dip in like that and not feel that the only way to approach a book is to read it from one side to the other.
Absolutely.
Or to read it one side and then feel guilty that you're not finishing it, right? And I think like there's something about having lots of books around that encourages you to maybe think about reading in a bit of a different way. So obviously you want to read a whole book if you can, that's great, but you don't have to read like that. There's many other ways of doing it.
I'm completely in agreement with you, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But if anyone is interested, the book, I think that was published after his death, or maybe it was already published, and then anyway, it's called Unsolicited Advice for the End Times by Michael Seidenberg. And I think you can find it just at independent booksellers. There's a place, I think, in Greenpoint. I'm sure I'll figure out a way to give you the information for that. But
it'll be on the website.
It's a book of his essays, and we have a copy, and it is delightful. And in memory of like an incredible New York establishment, I just feel like that alone.
Yeah, there was an inscription on one of the books I picked up at the liquidation sale, which was written to him there was a dedication to him in the middle. It was written by the author of the book. They said to Michael, from one purveyor of portals to another great purveyor of portals, something along those lines. But I like the idea of Brazenhead just being a portal. It was a portal into another world.
Yeah, it really was.
And it was totally magic. And I agree with you. I will never forget it. It was perfect New York experience.
I almost feel a bit ashamed talking about it as if it's an experience I've owned, as if I went many times. We only went the one time.
We only went once.
So I can't really claim to like...
We never knew him, really.
No, we never did. But he made such an impact in that short experience. And then it's gone. And then you never have the opportunity ever again.
That's right.
Closing of the portal. Well, what a lovely trip down memory lane for that. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well, join us next time where we talk about more stuff.
From New York.